everybody. Welcome back to Feedback Loop. I'm Joey.
And I'm Jeremy. Did I leave enough pause there?
Oh my god. I was
Throwing it back.
wondering if you were doing a callback, but
you panicked a little and you're like, is he doing the thing? Is he going to say it?
To be fair, I'm always in a state of panic. Except for when I'm listening to this week's album.
Oh, yeah. What did we listen to this week, Joey?
We listened to a little album by a band that I like called Pile, and the album is Green and Gray. I mentioned it on my list of 2020 good albums that I liked, and we're listening to it now.
Yeah, so you've been listening to it for about a year, at least, presumably. Is this something that you discovered last year? Because it just released last year, right? Or was it 2019?
It was May of 2019 when this album released. Last year, just randomly, I found one of their earlier albums. Mm-hmm. You're Better Than This I'm pretty sure that's what it calls.
I'm not
100%. Well, I may not be if I got the album name wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's called You're Better Than This. But I heard that album and I was just like, I really like this. And
there's clearly no pressure to get album titles right after last week's debacle of me not knowing the name of either of the Loathe albums that we talked about.
That we were talking about. That was the thing. We had just done a whole episode and we're currently doing the episode. But,
jeez.
Yeah. So then I eventually found this and I was like, oh man, I really like this album. So here's where we are.
Hell yeah. Well, I'm glad you like it because I may or may not hate it. And we're gonna be talking to that. So I don't know if you have any more firewood you want to huck on the fire before I light it, because I'm ready to go off.
Well, hopefully you don't chuck this album onto that fire, but we'll just start it, man. We didn't start the fire, but we started with track number 1, Firewood.
Nailed it. We're crushing it already. Okay, so I listened to this album for the first time last Friday. We recorded on Wednesday, I think, so I didn't listen to it on Thursday. So I started listening to it on Thursday, right? I started the first track, or maybe it was Wednesday night even. I think it was probably Wednesday night. Regardless, I started the first track and I had to stop it. I'm like, I've got to listen to this on Friday night because it just has that vibe.
Okay.
For me at least, of just like there's a specific feeling that I can't really explain that just comes with Friday night. I mean, it's the beginning of the weekend. I usually don't do anything on Friday nights like planned. Maybe I'll play video games with friends, but it's mostly a free night for me. So it's kind of like opening me up in a way. And I listen to it. I'm like, okay, I understand what this album's going to be. And I want to give it a full attempt, a full respect on Friday night because it sounded really cool.
Oh my God.
I immediately liked the sound of the first track, which is Firewood. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to wait till Friday night. Friday night, I went for a walk and I played this entire album. I walked through the entire album and then walked home listening to something else. But it's great. I'm just going to get that out. I really, really enjoy this album.
Oh, that's great.
But yeah, Firewood, it starts soft and slow. It's kind of got this like indie, the album and the mixing of this album. It all like sounds like you're listening to a live band play in like a small venue where like the vocals are kind of like reverby and echoey, but they're like also a little bit muted and the instruments kind of have the forefront, but they don't really overpower anything. And it just gives me the sensation of like being in a small venue for a live performance kind of a thing. But yeah, the song, it starts kind of soft and slow with some kind of like indie grungy guitar stuff, and the vocals come in and it gets more of that kind of grungy punk rock sound a bit. The guy's voice I really like. He nails the vibe of the music. He can sing really big and loud in the choruses and stuff, and it's just I want to be singing with him kind of a thing, because I don't know, his voice sounds great. The guitars, the drums, it all sounds great. And then throughout the song there's kind of like these ambient strings and effects that kind of accent this ebb and flow that kind of overtakes the whole album. Really, it's just kind of back and forth between this calm energy and this very aggressive punk kind of energy. With it kind of gave me like a System of a Down vibe in that respect, where they kind of like swap back and forth between more like melodic and chill sections and then like the fast-paced nu metal or whatever. But not that this sounds like System of a Down, but structure wise, it kind of gave me
Yeah.
those vibes. And there's a big finale solo section that just really brings the energy. I don't know. I love it. I love this album. It was a great recommendation, and
Hell yeah.
this is the way to start off the
Well,
album.
man, we've been on a good run with
We
these past
have.
few albums. Like it's I'm digging the energy that's happening, and I'm very glad you like this. I was kind of on I don't know, like I was on the edge, wondering if you were gonna like it or not, and it's I should have known that you were gonna like it.
Yeah.
But yeah, with the ebb and flow that you're talking about, that's just something that I really love about Pile, and it's just so cool because it feels so natural,
Yeah.
and there's just like times where there's a little bit of like silence almost behind
Hmm.
everything because he's just
It
it's
does feel very empty with like
yeah,
the echoiness of the vocals, and sometimes where they often strip back to like just the vocals and like a simple guitar playing under it, and it gives it that kind of spaciousness.
yeah, it's like I don't know, I feel like he's kind of just like you were walking around listening to this album. I feel like this is the music itself is kind of just like wandering around feeling its own emotions,
Yeah.
like going from highs to lows, and it just feels very natural. I like the way he sings a lot. The vocalist, a vocalist and like lead guitar player, I guess. I
Okay.
mean, I think him and another guy, Chappie Hull, uh, kind of switch, but the singer and guitar player and main songwriter, I guess, is Rick McGuire,
Hmm.
and I just love the way he sings. It's
Yeah.
just so like free,
It's
like
kind of like enchanting. It's just
yeah,
like there's a quality about it that you don't hear often.
yeah,
And it's
yeah,
not rough. It's not like it's like a negative quality. It's very smooth and very like somber and like melancholic in a lot of ways.
yeah.
It works.
I feel like this is a pretty, I guess, somber album, at least in parts, and he definitely has the voice to back it.
Yeah,
Um,
jumping ahead because this is something that I didn't like really put a lot of thought into until like halfway through the album. The title of the album is Green and Gray, and I guess kind of also getting into the lyrics. I guess we'll do the lyrics for this song first, but then I'm going to kind of skip ahead in my notes just to kind of because I have thoughts about the album title and how it
cool.
applies. I don't know if you do as well, but so this song Firewood, to me it feels like it's a very honest depiction of aging from the perspective of someone that's kind of in a similar mindset as me. So I find myself relating to this album in a lot of ways. But he's kind of poking fun about how people romanticize being young, but really it's very difficult to be a young person,
Yeah.
and it's very restrictive. And then you hit your adulthood and you're more free and independent and in charge of every action you take. So there's a lot of like burden there in some aspects, but it's freeing being able to know that you have control, kind of a thing. And then he lets the light shine on some like less positive aspects of his growth, where he talks about his this independence and this power that's kind of like breeding almost fear and isolation from people, where he's just kind of focusing on himself and he's not engaging. And over time that isolation is kind of given a bubble of ideals where he doesn't have to grow or change his worldviews often because he's not interacting with people. Granted, I don't think he's necessarily talking about himself in this scenario. Maybe he is, and he's kind of being reflective on it. But because of some of the other elements of this album, I kind of feel like that part of it at least is kind of judging people who grow old and never change their political ideals or whatever.
See, I think that's like spot on. Like that is exactly what I get out of this song and other songs on the album, and I really love that element that he brings to it because I think there's plenty of him singing about himself
Hmm.
to it, but yeah, it's I think a lot of what he says is also like a social commentary of just people in general as well.
Yeah,
But
and we'll definitely get to that
yeah.
at some point. But for the album as a whole, maybe this is being a bit preemptive and talking about the album as a whole before we're through the first track, really. But I think the Green and Gray album title has a lot of different meanings or manifestations, at least within this album. Where initially I was thinking, okay, well, green is just being young, and gray is being old, right? Because you're green, you're fresh, you're new to something, and when you're older, you start to gray, and it seemed like it was an age thing.
Hmm.
But I think it's also possible that he personifies both aspects with the ebb and the flow of the music, where the more subdued, relaxed stuff is the kind of older gray perspective. And then there's a lot of that more energetic, aggressive punk, fuck you kind of style stuff, which is the young and green perspective of things, with references being like growing old and being unchallenged in your worldviews, and that stuff being kind of the gray. And then he also does a lot of like that, like you kind of mentioned, the political subcontext of a lot of this, where he's just like screaming about change and criticizing people. And I feel like that's just kind of being this bright, energetic, green, young figure. So I feel like that it's kind of like personifying the album title perfectly with these two aspects of their music.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I've always seen, I mean, of course, because even in this song in Firewood, there's mention in the second verse, and when it gets dark, I will continue to stay out with my gray hairs all on the ground with something
Mm-hmm.
new to romanticize. Like he's talking about his gray hair, he's aging, and I've always taken like the gray is like stone, it's unchanging because he does talk
Ooh,
about being set in his ways.
I like
And
that
then
too.
yeah, and then green is like grass, trees, something growing, and where he's
Right.
talking about there's potential. That you have potential because when you're young, everything's hard and it's crazy. You don't know, and that's when you have your potential that you're trying to
Yeah,
like,
you're forming your ideas, and you're open to changing more.
yeah. And then you just hit a point where you're like, oh god, I'm
I'm done
setting,
growing.
yeah, like I don't want to. It's too much energy to grow, but
Yeah, which is something
man,
that comes up a lot on this album. But
yeah.
I think it's a very apt album title. I don't know if their other albums also have very apt titles, or if Green and Gray is indicative of their sound over all the albums necessarily, but it definitely made sense, at least in the context of this album.
Yeah, I not to just keep going off track, but they do have pretty apt album titles, I'd say. But
Cool. I
you know,
I will definitely check out more of their albums, because this was great. Good wreck, Joey. Good wreck. Your performance will be evaluated at the end of the year, and I'm going to give you a 5 out of 5.
oh thank God, because okay, track number 2 is your performance. I was just racking my brain because I had recently seen a earlier this year. It was the 10th anniversary of an older album that they did, so they
Mhm.
did a live performance of all of it, and I was like, how am I going to work that in, because we're talking about the aptness of other albums and their titles, and but no,
Doesn't
that was
matter. We're already
yeah.
there. We're on track 2. Your performance.
This one, man, I like the first track. It had like that energy, I guess, where
Hmm.
it brought in the ebb and flow, and then this one, it I feel like it does the ebb and flow even more, and it's a shorter song.
Yeah.
Like like there's a
That's
lot of
another thing that I noticed. Like, they have a lot of shorter songs on this album, but the shorter ones, they're very like they're concise. They get a lot of points across. I mean, even in Firewood, he
yeah.
covered like 3 broad themes that are used throughout the whole album, and it's a pretty short song relatively.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes for you people out there,
Yeah,
but
okay, so I guess in pop standards, it's not really a short song,
yeah,
but
but
in my mind, like, I mean, for the amount of subject matter being covered,
yeah,
they do
yeah.
great at condensing it down and getting points across.
And I mean, part of that song is just instrumental, so
Right.
really, it's shorter. But back to your
Yeah,
performance.
sorry.
No, I'm doing it too. But yeah, like the cool ebb and flow. It's like so much good effects in there. With I feel like his voice gets a little bit flatter at the beginning, and it's like for an effect as well. He's
Mhm.
got like a pretty flat voice over the guitar, but then the drums pick up and the song changes up, and the music gets heavier than even like Firewood did. But then he starts like bringing out the real screaming for a little bit, where he's
Yeah.
just really hitting that aggression, and I just, I just really love the energy that he can bring, but uses well when he does bring it, I guess.
Yeah, because again, it's that kind of ebb and flow where like there is a lot of potential for the energy and the punk and the aggressive kind of grunge music style, but they know when to use it properly, and so it's kind of this constant flow. Honestly, the song almost gave me like, I'm not even gonna say almost, it kind of made me remember like the Helms Ali album, that we did of
Yeah.
Sleepwalking Sailors, because at least for the intro section, or for the first part, it's very just like floaty, and I just feel like I'm kind of like floating at sea. The sun's kind of starting to sink, and just kind of like feeling lost, because there's this like, I don't know, sluggishness to the music, and it kind of like numbs the brain, like you're like a sad drunk kind of stupor kind of a deal. But yeah, and then it picks up and has the more punk vibe stuff. Lyrically, this one is the more political subtext. It's not really subtext, I guess.
Yeah.
But he, like, to me at least, it seemed like this is just like a diss track talking about how politicians aren't human, and they try to act like humans, but it is just an act, and they lie, and they campaign to people that are susceptible to buying into that kind of stuff, and they never really commit to anything. They just use empty words to make promises that nobody's ever going to hold them to, because once they're elected, they don't have to, because they're in control. Also, potentially calling them lizard people, which comes up later in the album as well. There was one thing I wasn't sure, and that's the last two lines of the album, or the song. He says, "With my lone offering, my lone offering." I guess the full last section is, "But it has no taste, provides no sustenance," talking about their words. But he says it still ends up at the table with my lone offering. I'm not sure what his lone offering is that he's referring to.
Yeah, that's where I'm kind of not 100% on this song, because yes, there is definitely like the political talk in there, talking about just the manipulative politicians who like don't believe a word they're saying, but
Right.
they want you to believe it, so you'll help them
Get
win
power.
whatever. Yeah, they'll get power, money, whatever. Um, but then the end of the song, that lone offering part, it makes me think that he's also like, he's talking about he's falling for it. Like maybe
Hmm.
I don't know if he's talking about like in a friendship as well, like comparing it to just people who are manipulative in real life, and it's like he's the only one who's falling for it. But I know, judging by the beginning of the song, it it doesn't seem like he's the only one falling for it. But
Yeah.
that's just kind of like at the end, I was like, what's his lone
I mean,
offering?
maybe you're onto something with the whole relationship angle, because that does seem to be one of the themes that kind of come up a few times throughout the album, is the fact that he's alone.
Yeah.
He's growing old and alone, and he's used to that. So maybe this is kind of explaining a bit how he feels about other people in general, and why he chooses to kind of be isolated in that aspect, because he feels that everyone's just always trying to use each other, and he feels like what he is offering in a relationship is so singular and small in the grand scheme of what people want out of relationships, that it's not even worth it.
Yeah, his views on, or his takes on this album, on like just not even strictly romantic relationships, I
Right.
don't think, but like just relationships in general, I can definitely relate to.
Yeah,
I'll
for
like
sure. I'm right. That's what I mean. Like, when I said I could relate, like even on Firewood, like, again, there's a feeling of isolation and being content with that isolation that I really relate to in this
yeah,
album.
and like realizing that there's just so much work that goes into it, and people are always out there like, oh yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's worth it. Like you have this social circle, or this friend, or this person that's always whatever, and just being a person that's like, I can understand that you think that,
But
but
it
I don't.
requires a lot of effort to maintain those
Yeah,
relationships.
and I just don't, I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah. It's, I mean, some people have different energy levels and different energy types, and some people can expend more energy in social settings and some people can't. And there's nothing fucking wrong with that.
Yeah, it's I don't know, just like all those people out there without social anxiety, maybe maybe it's easier for them. And not saying that I have like terrible social anxiety, because I do plenty of socializing,
Yeah.
but it's just like
It's
being
just
out.
when you're like forced to interact with people, and you feel obligated to do so, it's taking your very small anxiety and blowing it up on a bigger screen for you to kind of like feel swamped by. or feel the small
Jeremy
way.
MVP.
Killing it. Track number 3 is on a bigger screen.
I was trying to make my way there, and it just
I
wasn't
thought you
happening.
were, but I wasn't sure, and I was like, I don't want him to go on too long if he's not. So we're already like 20 minutes into this episode.
Oh my god. Okay, so this one, it's 2 minutes and 39 seconds long. So we can't be talking about it for that long. It
You don't know
starts
that.
off. It's got a lot more energy, fast-paced
Yeah.
guitar, and the drums really seem to like kick it into high gear. Which the drums on this album, I really like the way like he's. I guess if you're talking like technical skill, he is a technically skilled drummer, but I feel like he fits this band so well.
Yeah,
Where
for sure.
like he keeps up with the speeding up, the slowing down, and brings it all together in a way that I feel like really it takes the music up that extra notch.
I agree. This one, like you said, it starts with that kind of that big punk energy kind of thing, and I was waiting for that ebb and flow for the song to kind of calm down, and then finally that happens about halfway through the song. Which I mean, again, it's a pretty short song, but like halfway through, it just felt like all of the energy is just drained out, and you're left with this kind of slow, somber sleepwalk kind of deal, and then it comes back in because I mean, again, it's the ebb and flow, but the rough strings and the piano in that kind of like rough slow section really like accent it well, and they sell it. I love it.
Yeah, I love it too, especially that like I don't know, it's not the chorus, I guess, but that when they find you out, like the
Yeah.
way he just screams that and the vocal harmony behind it, it
Yes.
just really makes it. It's so like
He knows how to nail some really cool harmonies to get a specific feeling throughout this album, and I really enjoy it.
yeah, it like hits me in the same way that like vocal harmonies from Alice in Chains hit, where
Yeah.
like it doesn't sound like spot on to that, but it's just got that same the voices just work so well together.
Yeah, there's definitely like a grunge feeling that I get from a lot of this album.
But oh yeah, and the piano is I guess not introduced here, but it's very prominent in
Yeah.
the lower part of this song. And I really like the piano that they play because it sounds very lonely and like you just walked into an old dusty room and just plonked a key and you're like, "Ooh, that sounds haunting."
Mysterious.
Mysterious. Lyrically, I'm not 100% sure on what the actual meaning of the song is,
Me
but
too, man.
I've always taken it as trying to remain a private person. Like he's trying to keep his isolation as a person, not only just who is living in an ever connected society, but also like a person who's partly in the public light. And the issue, I don't know, I've always kind of thought there was like a different subtext to him talking about being such an isolated person, maybe such a closed off person, but his method of catharsis, I guess,
Hmm.
is to write songs, and his songs are public. So it's like he, even as a person who tries to remain so isolated, having your way out, it's still shared to the public. And I know he's choosing that, but it's just, I don't know. That's kind of where my mind went
Yeah, I
in
went in a
this song.
similar direction. I also wrote that I wasn't sure the intended meaning of the song, but my mind, and maybe it's just the time that I'm listening to it, it kind of made me think of cancel culture
Yeah.
being a thing, and how on edge that makes a lot of celebrities about things from their past being dug up and revealed, and suddenly they're being attacked from all angles and being ostracized because of something that they did that they would have rather kept private, obviously.
Yeah. And I mean, I get the knee jerk reaction of cancel culture. Like it's, I guess I can't say I get it. I don't understand the people who are looking through like decade old tweets being like, "Oh, look what you said when you were
Yeah.
16 or something."
I mean,
But
it's a double edged sword, right? Because
yeah,
you want to hold people accountable for their past actions. You can't just give them a get at a jail free card, but you kind of also have to be able to forgive, right? People make mistakes, people fuck up, and people grow. In this album, even like it's talking about change. People as they age, they form better opinions up to a certain age, apparently. But
hopefully.
yeah, hopefully. So like I don't know. There has to be some give and take there.
Yeah, like you want people to learn from their mistakes or whatever, grow as people. And it seems like in a lot of the situations, the span of time between whatever happened and the current day is not taken into account. Like
Right.
it's like, oh, you were this person 7 years ago.
And we have proof of it, so you are that person today.
Yeah, even though you probably have proof of them currently not being that person. It's just like, okay, but I feel like that's not taken into account enough, and it's just like, whatever, we want vengeance.
Yeah, they're just looking at, the sky from another moon, just kind of like saying, oh, this is old because light travels, it ages. So that's my shoehorn for the segue for track 4, Other Moons.
That other moon is, by the time that light gets here, we'll be
old.
done talking about this song.
Indeed, this one has it's a very like cinematic and chill track with some kind of like almost eerie sounds sprinkled in. Dude, his clean vocals on this track, they cut through with so much power, so much more than they even have in the prior tracks, when he's like, obviously not more than when he's screaming, but his clean vocals here, they hit another level, and I really love it. He also goes falsetto a bit, which he does a couple times throughout the album, and I'm okay with it, but I much prefer him not falsetto.
I like it because I feel like it works with kind of some of the more off kilter parts of, I guess, his clean singing, where it's like he's still keeping like an uneasy feel, a slightly off feel,
right?
And it sounds good, fine, but yeah, if you like this song, he just put out, I think it was just him, put out songs known together alone, and it's like reworkings, acoustic versions of a lot of the previous songs, and I feel like he does a really good job of keeping true to the originals, but still making good arrangements in acoustic. And this is one of the songs on there, and I like that version too.
Interesting. I'll definitely check it out after this podcast. Lyrically, this one, I couldn't get a deeper meaning on this one necessarily. It seemed like he's just talking about, other solar systems, moons, or more specifically, how we on Earth glorify our moon with myths and legends, and we give it so much pop culture fame, I guess, for being the moon.
See, that I couldn't feel if I was digging too deep or making too much, like looking too far into it, but it definitely could just be taken as talking about our moon and our like relationship with it, or with other moons of other planets or whatever. And then I was like, there has to be deeper meaning, which there doesn't actually have to be. I just wanted there to be, I guess.
It seems like there should be, especially amidst this album. I'm not gonna say that you're wrong in looking for that.
It made me think of like transactional relationships, or at least like passing relationships, and how we can kind of just leave people in our wake once they're out of focus. Like we are the suns or the planets or whatever. I know the moon doesn't go around the sun, people.
Are you sure?
I misspoke. Around our planets, we are our own planets, and we view other people as orbiting around us, at least like it seems like with the very me forward like online society. And I don't know, just how people can kind of orbit you and you don't even really realize it, or they're just gone, and I don't know, that's kind of where my mind went. But now that I'm saying it out loud, I don't know how much sense it actually makes.
I mean, it makes more sense than it just being a song about the moon. Well, I don't know if it makes more sense. It's a more interesting context than just being about the moon. Like I didn't want to spend too much time pulling out my hair trying to drive meaning into it.
Well, that's good, because then we'll have more time to talk about track number 5, Hair.
Killing it. We're back on it. We had a little speed bump with Other Moons segue, but we're back in it tonight.
Hell yeah. This one is it's one of my favorites on the album. And
yeah, I think it might be my favorite, if not one of my like top 2 or 3.
Hell yeah. It's just, it keeps the chill atmosphere of Other Moons, but it starts to bring a little bit more energy to it. There's just parts of the song that sound lost, like I was talking about earlier, where it's just like I'm just aimlessly wandering around. Sometimes there's music, sometimes there's not, but it's just like I don't know, the silence that they bring in this song, it's almost as impactful as the music for me, where it's just I'm kind of just sitting there and all these things are just happening to me. I'm meandering around in
Yeah,
search for something. Maybe comfort, maybe freedom. I don't know. But the cello string things come in softly and kind of just whisk me away whenever I'm listening to the song.
hell yeah. This one, it was more like steady in like tone and energy level than like the ebb and flow that we've been talking about in a lot of the other tracks. This one's more of a one note thing, but it still has a very nice build and a lot of progression to it. So it's not like calling it one note is offensive, because it's not. It doesn't bounce to the extreme of hitting that aggressive punk sound. This is one of the more like chill sounds. I like his vocals on this. A lot of times it kind of has like a conversational flow to it, where it sounds like he's just kind of like talking and just kind of like rambling on about whatever is coming to mind, without like without being super poetic about it, and without being super well thought out about it. Just kind of like it feels like familiar in like relationship with the song or whatever. But yeah, really like the song. The lyrics are not an exception. I Even on the surface level of the song, I love the lyrics to this song. But digging deeper, to me, the song's about accepting that what you think your actions mean and what they actually mean aren't always the same, or how you want something to happen isn't always how you make it happen. Because it's so easy to get caught up in the heat of debate and lose sight of what you actually believe, and it's so easy to exaggerate your feelings to get your point across that oftentimes you can kind of be perceived as a caricature of what you actually want to be or what you're actually trying to be. And he kind of goes in a circle at some point, when he says, I went from one reason to none, to as many as I could argue, and back to zero, because I could fight, but I don't want to. I'd rather recite my fate, which is kind of going back to what you already said about when you get old, you don't give a shit. You don't want to fight anymore. You just like, this is who I am, kind of a thing. But to me, this more specifically meant that he was like, starting out, he had a reason to believe in what he did, and then he felt like he didn't have to justify his beliefs to anybody. And then he got defensive, and he's like, okay, well, I have to keep coming up with so many reasons just to keep defending myself and countering what somebody else is saying and arguing. And eventually he just became so exhausted with doing that that he's kind of back to where he was. And he's just like, look, this is what I believe. I don't have to convince you otherwise. And I'm happy to accept that. And I'm not going to change my mind. I can see that you're not going to change your mind, kind of a thing, which again, kind of throwing back to Firewood, of people being unchallenged in their views in old age. It's great. And then the chorus has this kind of like imagery of being a tangled ball of hair with other people, which to me seems to be acknowledging that like everyone is so invested in the opinions of others that it becomes hard to really tell what is your belief and what is somebody else's. That
Yeah.
was a lot of rambling. I'm sorry.
I mean, I feel like this is a pretty deep song, I guess.
And again, they cover so much like lyrical breadth within the course of 4.5 minutes. It's insane.
And it's just so great. Like there is not a lyric in this song that I don't just love.
Yeah.
It's just even starting off like so the chorus is talking about this mass of hair. Like I feel some hair that's hanging off of me. It's not mine, nor do I want it to be. And
Mm-hmm.
once again talking about like his want to be isolated or to be free, just free of other people, free of society, and realizing the cost that that has. It this whole thing is written from a place where he's weighed the pros and cons and he understands and feels the negatives. It's not like he's so cold that he can't comprehend
Mm-hmm.
the negatives. He's just like, shit, I got a life that I want to live my life the way I want to live it. And I understand that that comes with the the bad parts of loneliness, I guess.
Yeah.
But so it starts off, I used to think there was just one puppeteer pulling on all the strings, but now it seems like we're all tugging on something in one big old tangled mess. And that just really hits the hair analogy, I guess,
Yeah.
where it's like you used to think that there was purpose to what you were doing and what like you said, it was just I do a thing, this is what happens. And it really is okay, I do a thing, this causes this person to do a thing, and this, it's like dominoes just going
Yeah.
fucking, it's just nuts, and he'd rather not be a part of that, I guess.
Yeah, and I also really like the last half of the chorus that you didn't read, which I'm going to read because I really like. He says,
Do it.
I will pull for you if that's what you want me to do, but I like to walk fast and I demand you allow me to," kind of a thing. Which again, this is kind of restating that like he knows what he wants and he's okay like accepting that there's going to be some give and take, but if you guys are all going to be in this together, like you got to let me do my own thing, kind of a thing, which I'm down for.
Oh my god. It's, yeah, this song, it's just like so fucking deep, it's so dense. It's like a labyrinth with no center. You're like, every time you take a turn, you're like, ah shit, but there's also this.
Yeah, you just keep wandering deeper and deeper, and there's never a resolute. There's no reward like the next track, which is a labyrinth with no center.
I did one.
You did one. We're doing it. We're sharing the load, Mr. Frodo. Is that what they say?
Yep.
Is that the Lord of the Rings reference I need to make?
Share the load.
For those listening, I might get a lot of flack from this from our one viewer listener. Hi Ben. Shout out to Ben, by the way.
Ben, he's the man.
Ben's the most consistent listener we have. But I'm not a huge fan of Lord of the Rings. I don't know if I've actually seen all of the movies, to be honest.
Yeah, because you fell asleep.
Yeah, cause they're not my cup of tea. But a labyrinth with no center, track number 6. This one starts with a very lovely acoustic guitar, and it's backed up by the droning like strings and cello from the last track at the end. And it kind of has some like slight doodling on some clean electric guitar that just sounds nice. It gets a bit spicy / jazzy with some of the chords that come in to progress the song. The build overall is pretty great, and then it leads into this big like raw punky explosion again that you're kind of expecting from Pile at this point. The song covers a lot of ground with its ebb and flow in just like 4.5 minutes. It's just constantly back and forth, and there's a really really awesome bridge section that has some like really driving toms and some fuzzy bass and some radic guitar and effects, and it kind of like leads you on this kind of crazy insane journey, and then ends with this big like final big punk section at the end. And it's very impressive. I like the song a lot.
Hell yeah. This one, I feel like it really personifies kind of that ebb and flow sound where it really hits the high, I guess, where other songs maybe were more laid back. This one really shows you how far they can go. Like it really brings the intensity and the screaming, and everything's just super like fast paced and in your face, where a lot of other songs are kind of slow. Even if they're heavy, they're still like, there's a slowness about them.
Yeah.
Lyrically, I think this song is about trying to navigate surface level acquaintances and not really seeing the point in it. Like,
Interesting.
to I guess kind of hit another, like the same point I've been hitting. It sounds like you might have something different.
I do.
But expecting that you can just live this easy life where you don't need anyone close to you, and then having to deal with the practice of that, I guess.
Yeah, and that's definitely a very likely theme. But for me, I don't know. This one, it seemed to be the inspiration for the album's title and theme of Green and Gray, where it seems like the singer's going through an experience of trying to find peace somewhere else. After all, the grass is always greener on the other side, kind of a motif coming in here, where he's navigating this labyrinth. He's going through his life and he's trying to find the reward, but he just comes out on the other side. There's no center or end point to his journey. He goes through this experience and he ends up on the other side. And on the other side of the labyrinth, guess what? It's the same shit that he started with. He's just outside of this labyrinth, and nothing's different. And with this realization, it seems like this is the point where he's kind of finally losing that like energetic, ever-changing green mentality, and accepting that, like, you know what, it's shit everywhere. It doesn't matter what I go through. There's no point, kind of a thing. So I'm going to stop trying to find better and just kind of accept my stagnation in life.
I feel like yours is probably right, considering the song is called "A Labyrinth with No Center." That just,
I mean, just to me, that it seemed like that a labyrinth with a center would theoretically mean that there is an end point, right?
There's a reason.
There's
to
a
do
payoff. There's a reason for it. Which, I mean, also kind of goes into what you were saying about he clearly feels that way about relationships because he's kind of avoiding them. And maybe even, this is maybe going a bit far, saying a labyrinth with no center isn't necessarily saying that the reward isn't there. Maybe he's just avoiding it. Maybe he just never sees the center of it because he's too busy, skirting the outside of the labyrinth, and he's just going from one side to the other. And that's his experience with relationships, is just a very surface level thing where there's not something deeper in.
Because goddamn are those time wasters. I understand that like you need to maintain like work colleagues or whatever. Not I guess you don't need to, but it
helps.
It helps. Yeah. Like it helps you earn more money eventually.
And that's the point of life, right? Is to make as much money as possible before dying.
Make sure to ask how everybody's weekend was and
go buy our merch as well to help us make as much. We don't have merch.
I was about to say, when did this happen, Jeremy?
We don't have any. I do have a FeedbackLoop hoodie that Joey got me for Christmas last year, which is pretty dope. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, I bet it would feel really good in the soft hands of Stephen Miller.
It would. Very soft hands, very soft hoodie. Maybe we'll sell them someday. But that day
it'll look better if we do, I'm sure.
It will. Track number 7, the soft hands of Stephen Miller. Not the Steve Miller Band, Stephen Miller, by the way.
So. And not just probably literally anybody else named Stephen Miller. There's one specific Stephen Miller, but I feel like that's a very common name.
Yeah, that's fair. This one, it's a very crunchy rock guitar kind of that comes in, and it repeats in the right ear. And I know we've talked about this before. I think it was on the was it Motion City Sound? One of those punk bands, whichever one Alyssa recommended.
It was Motion City Soundtrack.
Yeah, where we talked about having the audio in just one ear kind of irks at me. It's still there in the song because the rock guitar riff just repeats in the right ear, but there is more in this track where the singer's just like screaming and yelling at you and in stereo, and the drums come in and it's reinforced that way. But after screaming in angst for a few minutes, the full sound kicks in, and this is maybe one of the most punk sounding songs on the album, if not the most punk song that they've done, where there's not a lot of structure to it necessarily. It's just like a simple riff. It's got drums for accent, and there's not a lot to it until the end, where it just fucking goes chaotic and just has a big bang ending kind of thing. It's very like aggressive and noisy.
Hell yeah, it is. It's chaos and it's great. The bass sounds like thunder.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking it's the bass. I guess it could be the guitar, but I feel like it's the bass. I'm not enough of a connoisseur to be able to just know.
A bass connoisseur.
Who's a bass connoisseur? There's like Victor Wooten, Marcus Miller. Those are bass connoisseurs.
There you go. I got a joke for you.
Yeah.
What do you throw a drowning bassist?
His amp.
His amp. Metalocalypse reference of the week. I had to get it in there.
Hell yeah. Oh, man. Well, sorry to bassists out there, but also not sorry, I guess.
But yeah, lyrically, this one, he's screaming about Stephen Miller, who is apparently an assistant to the Donald Trump. And he's just like screaming about him being a shitty two-faced politician that thrives on fear-mongering.
And hey, would you look at that? He is that guy. I always thought this was just about like some random Weasley person. I didn't know like Stephen Miller was a legitimate person.
Yeah, I googled Stephen Miller.
Yeah. That's like, I was doing my research for this, and I was like, oh, and it was like he's some super. He was like the speechwriter for Donald Trump, and he's like super like ridiculously anti-immigration, like almost he should get a medal for it, like some sort of I don't know, like maybe it looks like 4 hammers all in a circle or something, like some kind of medal for it. But this dude, he's just like a super shitty dude, and the song is just talking about what a Weasley dude he is. And there's a line in here that pokes fun at the fact that his great grandmother, of course, was a Jewish immigrant who fled to America to escape persecution, but now he seems to have conveniently forgotten that fact just 3 generations ago.
It's because it makes him money, you know. It's all about fucking money.
That's very true. Most people will sell out their next door neighbor for some money.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. In January he came to the country. By February he's selling them out like he's some sort of fucking lord of calendars.
Yeah, the Lord of Calendars really would sell out
What a
because,
fucking horrible segue.
I mean, it's a tough track. Track
It
8, Lord
is.
of Calendars. Like, what?
Yeah, this one it takes a step down in energy from the prior track, but it definitely doesn't come completely down. It's still very like punky and rocky at times, but with a little bit less screaming and aggression. There's some smooth sections that are just great, and it just like the zoning out aspect of it just felt like catharsis after screaming so much in the prior track, where this is just like, okay, I can take a deep breath now. I've said what I've said, and this is just me kind of mellowing out. And then there's a transition around like the 4 minute mark that just goes in a completely different direction with the chord progression that I was expecting, which caught me off guard, but I loved it. And then it kind of ends with this big punky finale.
Hell yeah. It's, man, that bridge that they got in there,
Yeah,
that's, I'm guessing that was the part that you were talking about,
I think so.
because it's man, I just love it. It gets stuck in my head all the time. And it's just great. And I love it, and I love the energy, and I'm just gonna say I love it again,
You love
because
it. You love the Lord of Calendars.
well, from like this point on to the end of the album, it's just like a bunch of hits for me.
Interesting.
Like,
I
is it
hate
gonna?
the rest of this album.
Oh my
No, I'm
god!
just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Lyrically, I think this song is about trying to manage several, I don't know, I guess obligations, social obligations, or just life obligations, and just trying to keep, like, kind of what he was talking about with hair, where it's like everything's kind of just interconnected, and you're just like, shit, man, I have enough energy to devote to all of this stuff? And
Yeah.
in the end, you end up choosing the one and devoting all of your energy to that one, and kind of just being like, I'm just gonna do my thing over here.
Yeah, it's kind of this theme of focus that was kind of again alluded to in Firewood. There's a lot of themes in Firewood that come up again on this album, and I really enjoy that about this. And this kind of seems to be talking about the focus aspect of it, where like it just it again kind of basically what you said. It feels like he's kind of like settling down and focusing on what's important to him instead of trying. I took it in the more like social way of like throughout this album, a lot of what I've been talking about is trying to change the opinion of other people or dealing with other people trying to change his perspective. So instead of him trying to like please them or change the opinion of other people, he's just focusing on what he wants instead of kind of trying to be there for everyone else and do what they want him to do.
Yeah, it's a recurring theme, and I could keep saying that over here with my Bruxist grin.
See,
But
I was ready to go with the recurring theme being like some sort of reoccurring nightmare where you're sleeping at night and you're just grinding your teeth because it's so intense. And from the outside perspective, you got this Bruxist grin
what
on you
is
because
Bruxist?
bruxism is grinding your teeth. It's the word
Oh,
for grinding your teeth. So
shit,
like
dude.
a clenched jaw is a Bruxist grin if you're
I
showing
do
your
that.
teeth and doing that. Yeah.
I
But track
totally
number
do
9 is Bruxist Grin. That's why we were talking about Bruxism.
that.
I don't think we clarified. This one,
Nah.
it's simple and it's sweet with the clean guitars to kind of mellow you out. And then wham, you get hit with this like psychedelic rock riffage that just wakes you the fuck up. There's not a whole lot else to say about it, at least from my perspective on the music. It kind of transitions back and forth between this kind of groovy psychedelic feeling and the more like indie chill vibes that they've got going on.
Yeah, I definitely like the guitar riffage on this one. That, like you said, psychedelic feel, and the vocals, of course, because especially
Always.
the end, it's just, man, the way he delivers all of the lines, it's great. But
He's a great
especially
vocalist.
the second time around at the end, like the very last, where it's like the instruments kind of back out and it's just him,
Yeah.
and it's great. This one, I think that this song is about the anxiety of like feeling trapped, like feeling like you've gotten yourself in over your head in a situation where, like in Lord of Calendars, he's talking about, I guess, strapping it all to one horse is how he put it.
Yeah.
And this
Because
is
the analogy in the song is that he started out with a bunch of different horses pulling in different directions, and now he just has one horse that's pulling in one direction, kind of a thing.
yeah, and I feel like this is not necessarily the consequence of that, but I don't like the trouble either way part makes me think that he's at a point where he's just like, damned if I do, damned if I don't
Yeah.
type. Like, do I try to deal with having all these, I don't know, all these eggs up in the air that I'm juggling, or do I, so that I don't get egg on my face?
There you
Or
go. You're just laying on the idioms.
man, I'm like I'm thinking faster than I'm talking, and this is
Yeah.
always the case. And I'm just like, eggs, they're in the air.
Eggs,
You-
egg on face, eggs in the air, juggling, fragile. Yeah, I also couldn't really get a good beat on the meaning of this one, other than like a vague stress feeling. So I cheated.
yeah.
I scrolled down a little bit on Genius. Yeah, okay, yell at me, but I needed to know because I couldn't get anything. McGuire explained that the experience that inspired the song, he said, quote, I just know that there's a bunch of change that's going to happen in my life real soon, and my body is reacting to all of it. So, I mean, it was not any deeper than than just the vague stress feeling that we both kind of already picked up on,
So
which
stressful.
surprised me.
The kind of stress that would make you grind your teeth. The kind of stress that would make you feel so small, just like a bug on its back, ready to be squished.
Track number 10 is a bug on its back.
Bug.
Bug. Little dune
Ladybug.
buggy. Ladybug. Fucking presidents of the United States of America. They like
Hell
singing about
yeah.
bugs, man.
They do. I didn't even realize that until you started to sing Dune Buggy and I started to say Ladybug. And I was
They
like,
like
shit,
bugs. But we're
this
talking
is.
about Pile.
Yeah, we are.
We're on the
And
home stretch. We got, what, 4 tracks left?
yeah. And this is another one that it's just got such a smooth transition from the last song. Like,
Yeah.
I feel like the second half of this album, it's just, it could be a song with how they write songs because they're, even in their songs, they're so different. So I feel like this could just be one long song that's just ever changing. But
I'd be interested to hear a long 15-minute song from them in that style. I'd be down for it.
well, maybe it exists and
Maybe.
maybe I'll find it for you. But it's just another great song. Like I can't exactly say it's up there with like Hair or anything, but man, I love the energy on it. Like when it ramps up towards the end and gets all heavy like through the
Yeah.
guitar solo and it's just man, and then the vocals come back in with him just like screaming and
Yeah.
it's just it's
The
just
whole
great.
like last section of the song is it comes back with blistering intensity, and you just kind of speed like some fucking roller coaster that's about to ramp off the rails. It's insane. I really like the song. Again,
Hell yeah.
the vocals definitely, like, I don't know, they nail it. He nails it every track. 10 out of 10. Good
10
on
out of
you,
10.
Rick. Was it Rick McGuire?
Rick McGuire.
Good on you, buddy.
Hell yeah.
You can sing and you know how to support it with the music going on, or maybe vice versa. Maybe the music comes first and he's just good at fitting his vocals in. Regardless, I like the track. Lyrically, this one's pretty simple. I mean, it's another like shorter. They have a lot of songs where they don't actually have a lot of lyrics, and if they still manage to say a lot, this one it seemed like he's just like, like from the perspective presumably of another politician, because he seems to hate politicians, which I can't blame him. But it seems to be him just saying like, who cares if the poor are struggling? There's probably nothing you can do to help them. It'd just be a wasted effort to help a bug on its back. It's just gonna die anyway. Nobody would even miss the bug. Just fuck the poor.
Yeah, because that probably honestly is what like all the politicians are just like. And I know I sound like I'm making a joke right now, but I'm not. I feel like there's got to be some people out there that are just like laughing their asses off all the way back to their fucking mansions,
Yeah,
just being like,
I'm
"We
not
just
gonna
made
help the poor. What if I donate $1 million to the poor? They're all still gonna die. What point does it
yeah,"
make?
and then I won't have $1 million. It's like it's
Fuck you, Jeff Bezos.
God fucking damn. It should have stayed in space. You fucking asswipe. But
Oh
yeah,
boy.
you hit it. You hit the nail on the head. That's what the song is. With I can say with absolute certainty that is what the song is about.
Yeah, it's pretty apparent the guy does not like rich people. If you work at Amazon, you need to write a strongly worded letter to Jeff Bezos asking him to help you out, and you can start it by saying, My employer, Jeff Bezos, give me money.
And then listen to track number 10 off of Pyle's album Green and Gray, titled My Employer.
Maybe a kind of jury-rigged segue, but
That's fine.
it worked. This one's a very smooth follow-up to the very like boisterous energy of A Bug on Its Back. It's kind of a nice melancholy break to help round out the end of the album. This one feels like the energy is kind of coming down for the end of the album, and I like that.
Yeah, this is definitely on like the down slope. And yeah, I really like the song. It actually did get an alternate release where it's heavier.
Oh, interesting.
Which sometimes when I'm listening to it, even before I knew that there was an alternate version, in my head I could hear it as a heavier song.
Yeah.
And so it just seemed, I'm assuming they had the same thought and we're just like, fuck it, we'll do two of them. Which, that's awesome. Thanks.
We'll do a green version and a gray version.
Hell yeah. This is, one of the few songs that doesn't really change up too much throughout. And I appreciate it for that. It's not as off the rails as some of the other tracks, but it's just like a slow, thoughtful, slightly somber song about like self-realization. I think like what do you get from this song, Jeremy?
So this supports my green and gray theory being represented in the vocals, I think, where the last track was the green with all the aggressive screaming about people not changing, and this track immediately comes in with him saying, I'm aware of my age, my impermanence, and so forth. I've made arrangements to change, but my nature will make its case, which is very much that the gray perspective that I've posed for this album. Because of that, though, I'm not really sure at this point if the gray and the green are supposed to be the same character at two different points in their life, or if it's two characters at one point in time, kind of a thing. But I find myself enjoying the gray sounds and lyrics more than the green, where it's the more calm. Because I mean, I don't know. Maybe this is just because I don't listen to a lot of punk, or maybe I don't listen to a lot of punk because of. But it's all just screaming like "fuck the people in power" to me, and that gets old for me. So I don't know. I feel like I enjoy the gray sounds of this track more than A Bug on Its Back, with just all the screaming about rich politicians and whatever, because it's all been done before. But
I'll give you some good punk about not about. There was this one dude at Planet X Fest that I went to, and the whole song was just about a chupacabra. And the whole song was just like chupa 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 chupacabra, and like it was great. But continue.
But yeah, so this one again, I remembered, called back to Firewood, and it seems like it returns to another theme that was set forth in Firewood, that the singer is accepting that he's better off single because he just can't make relationships work. And I really like one of the verses. He says, I found fire when I was 12. It's lasted over 20 years, and I can count on one finger the people who can hurt me now, which is just great lyricism.
Hell yeah, it is.
But it returns to the fire of track one being Firewood, and he talks about it being used to keep him warm when he doesn't have a partner, when he doesn't have somebody else to lean on. And he survived long enough, so like that isolation from people is protecting him from people and their wrongdoings inherently, because he can't be hurt by people if he's not near them.
Yeah, like the lyricism on this song is, I'm glad you pointed out that line because I was going to if you didn't. It's God, it's just such, and the way he sings it too is just, oh God. But yeah, so this song, it's about him growing older, realizing that he's got to he's made the choice to be alone at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and just the way it ends too. Like, so I guess before I say that, I should talk about the fact that my employer, I think that's him. Like, he is his own employer because he makes music. And I've kind of always seen this song as him being like, look, I love to make music. I love to, like, this is what I want to do. This is what I'm doing. And if, like, that is a part of his choice to have been alone at this point, where he's like, I got to put this first. Like, he keeps saying work comes first.
Yeah.
And the way it ends, so work comes first. I'm sorry if I shut off. I've never been able to do both. So I keep my nose down. And if it means a movie alone, it could be worse. And that's just like, he's at this point, he's like, I get it. I understand that other people want or need things from me. I understand that. I guess maybe there would be positives to it, but he's like, this comes first. This is my thing. I make
Right.
music. I have chosen this, and that's what I do.
Yeah, and a lot of people, especially when they're looking for a relationship, don't want to come second to work. And that's kind of, I mean, the quote unquote rock and roll lifestyle, right? Is you have to put the music first. And some people are cool with it. Some people are totally fine with being second to your career, and more power to those people. Good on you. But it seems like Mr. McGuire has not had that experience. And so it's just like, look, like, I get it. Relationships aren't going to work out just because I'm so invested in my music career.
And I gotta say, I'm glad, not glad that you're
For
alone,
sure.
I guess, but I'm glad you're very
I'm glad he's
invested.
alone, because if he wasn't alone, he wouldn't be writing this shit.
You know, I guess that's true. So thank you for being alone and writing this album,
Taking
Mr.
one for
Rick
the team.
McGuire. Hell yeah. Taking 13 for the team because there's 13 tracks
Tracks.
on this album.
Yeah, we need to find some better places to hide your weird anecdotes. What? It's not even an anecdote. It's just like a
That's a fact.
just a fact. Your weird facts. We need to find better hiding places to put those so they don't come out. Hide them somewhere deep in your mind.
Well, track 12 is long enough to hide plenty of shit in there. So track 12, hiding places.
Don't hide your weird facts, Joey. I appreciated it. I thought it was humorous.
Thank you.
It was just weird.
Yeah. I've accepted my weirdness.
Good.
In old age, like he's talking about becoming gray. I used to be afraid of looking into somebody's eyes while I'm talking to them and being able to just tell that they don't give two shits because I don't either.
Yeah.
I'm just talking. My brain is on to a different thing and my mouth is just continuing talking, and it's like seeing the light leave their eyes. And I used to be so afraid of that. Now I'm at a point where I can look at it and be like, ah, shit, I'm doing it again. But that's I'm not going to beat myself up over it.
Yeah.
Like it's probably happening right now.
Nah, I'm totally engaged with your story. Track number 12, hiding places.
Again.
So it starts with some very like atmospheric ambience, which is really cool. You can kind of hear him talking or singing in the distance through like a megaphone or something distorted and fuzzy, but I couldn't really make out what he was saying. And then the song, quote unquote, starts with his like big and powerful, but also not like fast and aggressive kind of section where it feels like it knows the pace it needs to have to get the point across, where it kind of rides that line of being powerful but not aggressive, which is a very delicate line, I think. And then it strips itself bare when the vocals come in, and it kind of like slowly reassembles itself for a little bit. There's some really cool like mysterious chord progressions that give some really groovy vibes that I like throughout the song. The big loud power eventually does come back completely for a nice like instrumental solo section, and stays around until the end with some like feedback and amp noise and stuff that kind of drones for a good 20 seconds at the end of this track. That gives this song kind of the feeling like this is the end of the album, even though there is another track after it.
Yeah, I feel like this is the climax of the album, like the big ending, but then there's
Right.
also an
There's an
after.
epilogue kind of thing.
Yeah. And God, this song, it's just like a great blend of all of the sounds that I love in music. The heaviness without going too heavy. They maintain the slowness
Yeah.
in it. And it's just, it sounds like one of those, like, I guess they're like the drone type bands that are just like super slow. All their songs are like 20 minutes long because they're playing one note every like 5 measures.
Yeah, which
But,
I mean, kind of going back, that's kind of what Sleepwalking Sailors by Helms Ali felt like. It was a lot of that kind of like droning and just kind of like floating out in the middle of sea.
hell yeah. But it's nice and I like it. And I feel like the music really does a good job of like illustrating what he's talking about and how he's singing. Like everything just kind of seems to be one being, where whenever he's getting a little bit quieter the music is, and whenever he's bringing it back up the music is coming back up with him.
Yeah, it's a very good range of sound volume and tone and emotion, and it's just this is the piece de resistance of the album.
The chef's kiss.
The chef's kiss. Lyrically
Oui, oui.
and musically, I feel like this track solidifying its place as like the climax, as the ending of the album. It feels like it's melding both of the green and the gray attitudes that I've kind of personified throughout this album, where it seems like he's criticizing someone for fooling the world, and since they pulled it off, they were able to and or forced to flee and live in isolation, disconnected from society. So it seems like the truth was revealed before they were outcasts, that they had fooled the world, and now they have to go and live with their guilt or their shame for the rest of their life. Maybe referring to himself, and this is where I kind of mentioned it, either I think it was in the last track, where I wasn't sure if the green and the gray were two different people or if it was one person, and this kind of like solidifies that. I think it might just be one person, one character, maybe not himself, but also maybe he does feel it somewhat of himself, and it's just making it bigger than it really is. But it seems like this is melding those kind of like isolation and old and being cemented in your reality away from everyone else because of things that you did when you were younger, because of the change and the green, quote unquote, that you've had in your past.
Yeah, I've definitely always felt like this was where green became gray.
Yeah.
And the opening, I guess, lines that he's saying, he repeats at the end, but they're collectively pulling one over, together duped, universal ripoff, cosmic prank on a world of suckers. And
Yeah.
that, I feel like that illustrates both green and gray, where he's talking about, like, you could say that about politicians pulling one over on people, like, you're all just suckers, you're getting ripped off by these people, you're getting fleeced, you're whatever. And then the gray, who has chosen the isolation,
Yeah.
convinced himself that he's better off without people. He could
Right.
be saying that
But he's
about,
also lonely. So
yeah,
he's kind of saying that, like, yeah, I chose this life. Fuck me, I guess, because I do want to not be lonely, but I've also made myself lonely, kind of a thing.
yeah. I feel like this is, I don't know, kind of like an attempt to be able to be like, at least I'm not a at least I'm not a sucker. I didn't get I
Right.
chose my life, or he's like
Yeah.
something like that, where
I
especially
might have
because,
regrets, but they're regrets that I chose.
yeah, like I chose my own path at least.
Yeah,
And I
and I mean
feel like,
he not to cut you off again,
no.
but like he's this whole album he's been aware of the pros and cons. Like, I mean, you mentioned that since track one, he's been weighing that the whole time, and he's accepted that. He's like, yeah, there are good things that I'm going to be missing out. Yeah, there are bad things that I'm going to be getting by doing this, but it is my choice, and that's the life that I want to live, kind of a thing.
God, dude, the lyrics are just like, it starts after that intro part. Another ugly portrait that I will use as an argument, and a joke I'll use as proof. Which, it could mean, there's so many things that
Yeah.
we've talked about that could go to. That could even go to the cancel culture sidebar that we took earlier, where like, another ugly portrait that I'll use as an argument and a joke I'll use as proof could be people taking what you're saying out of context
Yeah.
to then bring it back, be like, here. Or it could be you only looking for the bad in relationships, in government, in like anything that you're looking at, and being able to just be like, yes, this is indicative of all of it, so I'm using this as the proof now. And
Right.
then it,
And that, like, because of that, like, again, being set in stone in your opinions, right? Like, there's that green where the section of your life where you're trying to form your own opinions, where you're leaning so hard into your arguments and your beliefs to try and convince other people that you're right. And this is just one of the ways that kind of it builds on itself, and it builds until you're pulling shitty excuses out or shitty reasoning into these debates because you're just constantly being pressured to add more and explain yourself more and more and more.
oh man, I'm gonna read more lyrics, because it's
Just
just
read the whole song, Joey.
then, well, and then the next lines, like, it even hits on that, the green and gray, so much, the change, and then the unable to change,
Yeah.
where he says, holding those cards so close that you can't read them anymore, but there's a time limit, and it's the hand you have to play from now on, with a past from which you can't take off. And it's just like, so you have these big ideals whenever you're young, and it causes you to make these choices, but you're so in it that you can't even realize how it's
Yeah.
affecting everything else. But then there's a time limit because you're going to hit a point where you're so set in your ways that it's the hand that you have to play from now on.
Yeah.
And
Because
it's
people cannot accept that you'll change, and you can't. You like, maybe this is going a bit too deep, but like even something that I've been struggling with personally this past year, which is my perception of me versus other people's perception of me, which I guess kind of came up earlier on the album. Just like you lean so hard into being a certain person that you kind of lose sight of what you were wanting to be. That you're that people are expecting you to be a certain way because you've put forth so much effort into being that way, and you've kept building and building and building on it, and you've grown so far away from what you like intended at the beginning, just because it's just how our human brains are dumb like that. We'll defend something to the death even if it's inconsequential, and that kind of forms a perception of you that might not be what you wanted it to be.
Yeah, and it's just always being reinforced by other people making the comment like, "Oh, that's like, oh, classic Jeremy," or
Right.
like shit like that, where it's like, "Oh, I guess I'm this person now."
Yeah, that's me. And you feel like that becomes a part of you, and then you have to defend that at some point, even
Yeah,
though that wasn't originally a part of you.
god damn, man, social pressure.
And then you get old, you get gray, and that stuff becomes you. Fuck that. That's my life lesson this year. Fuck that.
Fuck
Be
that.
who you want to be. Good on you, fucking Mr. McGuire. Rick. I couldn't think of his first name. Rick McGuire. Even if clearly he wasn't talking. Well, I mean, I think some of this is me reading into it and applying my own context to it, but I think there's also some of that of him just wanting to be himself and him doing his own thing despite other people's perception of what he is.
Yeah, he wants to get away. I feel like that's definitely part of the isolation that he's talking about, where he just had to hit a point where he was like, "I'm out, clean cut.
Yeah,
I'm leaving. I'm gone. I'm
packing my
riding this
bags.
bike. I'm riding this bike with no hands, man. Just off into the woods.
Yes, track number 13, No Hands.
No
We've
hands.
come to the final track of this long episode. I'm not
Oh
going
my
to
god.
apologize. We've had good fun, and we're still having fun because we're riding bikes with no hands. This one's another more like chill track, and it leans into the kind of like lovely strings and the piano to kind of provide weight as this kind of like epilogue track plays out. It has some serious progression and growth in it. It swells up at times and then eventually just kind of like abates as the waves return to the ocean. Kind of a feeling hits at the end of the track.
Man, this, like, we had said that this isn't really like the big climactic ending or anything. It's more like an epilogue. But I love it for that. I love
Yeah,
it so much for that. Like, I
this
feel
album
like
is very well structured.
it is. Like, I feel like even though this isn't the big climactic ending, it's still the ending that I want
Yeah,
for this album.
yeah, because I
And
mean, if it had left off on hiding places, it would have ended on a high note, and it would have ended like with all this energy, waiting for resolution. And that's what this track does. Is kind of like brings that resolution. It brings it to some sort of finality.
yeah, it's just a really, it gets intense, but not in like an aggressive way. I feel like it just
Right.
gets like heavy in the way that you're like realizing something. You've hit the aftermath of hiding places, and you're like, shit. Well, I'm here now.
This is the regret and the acceptance.
Yeah, yeah, and acceptance is the big thing where it's like he's just like, okay, well, this is life. I've made my choices, and I'm accepting them at least for the time being. And
Yeah.
there's
It's kind of saying like, look, I've chosen to be alone all this time, so I've adjusted to it. I'm used to it. This is who I am. But what if? What
yeah,
if I had done something different?
I definitely, man, and just him keeping repeating anything too stupid to be said is sung while singing the whole song is
Yeah.
like, and having just sang a whole album where it's like it really throws it on like how much of these choices does he act like he's accepts them, but how many does he regret, or
Right.
does he feel differently about now?
Yeah. I
But
mean, he's once again kind of weighing the pros and cons of the life that he's chosen, and kind of this time it's more reflective than being proactive, and where throughout this whole album he's had the choice. He was green, now he's old and gray, and he's kind of like looking back and saying, you know, this is the life that I chose, but I'm not 100% certain that I chose right.
Yeah, and just the way he sings, it's so conversational.
Yeah.
Like, god damn.
He's great.
Like, the second verse, it seems decent enough and plenty welcoming, and it's around, which is more than can be said of me. And even if I was, I wonder if that would have changed anything. And it's just like, he's just like weighing all these options in his head, and he's like, man, I still don't know.
Yeah.
But did I do the right thing? Did I do the wrong thing? Like, maybe I should have dropped everything and gone after it and hoped it wouldn't do what it does. But it, of course, does.
It does, because anything stupid, too stupid to be said, is sung, and he's singing.
Oh God!
Expert lyricism. I love this album. This was a great recommendation. I think it hit at the right time. It's starting to get a little fall, which I can definitely feel this being. It's not as warm and bright and summery as summer music, but it's still not like super cold and wintry. So like, I don't know. This fits the time frame of my reality of music, I think, perfectly, and it's a good Friday night album for me. I think I love it. It's perfect. Next week, I've picked an album, Joey.
Have you?
I believe you've listened to this band. I don't think you've listened to this album. The album is Low Teens by the band Every Time I Die.
Oh, okay.
I've talked about this album with Joey a few times, or at least mentioned it a few times. I really fucking love this album. It's a lot of like aggressive punk music, but which I know I said that I hate and I don't listen to a lot of, but this is what I do listen to of it. This album specifically, just like, I don't know, it has a good balance. It is very aggressive and very punk rock, but we'll get there. This is what we're doing. So it's again, Low Teens by Every Time I Die. We're going to be listening to that this week and coming back next week to talk about it. You guys let us know what you think of this Pile album, Green and Gray, or of Pile, or of our discussion, of our thoughts. If you have disagreements with what we said, let us know. Rick McGuire, if you're listening, we'd love to have you on an episode and talk about another Pile album or something, or even this one again, because it's a fucking good album. You're an expert lyricist and songwriter.
Let's talk about all of them, every single one.
But yeah, leave us some comments, send us some messages, show us some love. What is slam that subscribe button, punch the like button.
What does Apple Podcasts have? What button do they have?
I don't fucking know.
Nobody's listening on Apple Podcasts.
Support us is all I'm saying. If you like this, if you don't like this, whatever, leave us some dislikes.
Yeah.
At least then we know that we're being heard and people aren't liking it. Then we can maybe change. Probably not, because we're gray and old and we're set in our ways.
Hell yeah, we are.
But until then, stay in our feedback loop.
Bye.